Blessed Day Reflection by Abijah listeners. My name is Abijah Grant, and we are here to reflect on our life journey. We will be discussing topics related to self awareness, self improvement, and mental health. Also, the purpose of this safe space is for us to be free to discuss the ups and downs, celebrate the wins, and talk about ways to improve the lows. So, welcome to this podcast, and I hope you gain something from this time we share together. Hello everyone, how you doing? It is your girl Abia Grant. Welcome back to another episode of Reflection by Abia. I hope that you are doing well and having a blessed day. So, welcome back to another episode. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode and you take something away. So, in this episode, I really wanted to speak about breaking free from the chains of shame and how avoidance becomes a factor as well too. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because in last week's episode, I was speaking about just the narcissistic relationship I was in and how I pretty much had to start all over again after leaving that relationship. Just a lot of things that I also learned about myself as well too. But also with that, what became a big factor for me is the shame, and me just the tendency to avoid situations. Now, avoidance has been something that I can say I've dealt with a long time, even up to this day, where I have to make myself do something, be even though I don't want to do it, just because the feelings of not understanding the outcome, and just me feeling that pressure to tackle whatever situation that it may be. But I've realized that avoidance does not stop um, it from manifesting or whatever that you're trying to do. That avoiding it is not the best choice. And this is just something that I do. I don't know if it's something that you do, but we're going to be talking about that in this week's podcast episode. So let me go ahead and get the housekeeping rules out the way, and then we'll get started with this episode. All right, so if you are listening to this podcast on Spotify, be sure to hit the follow and notification button so Spotify lets you know when I release a new episode. As well, leave me a comment on what you enjoy about the podcast and give me a 5-star rating. This is how you can support my podcast. And then the disclaimer is I am not a licensed psychiatrist or therapist. My suggestions and my guests are based on general knowledge and life experiences. If you're considering making significant changes or dealing with personal issues, seek and talk to a licensed mental health professional. So, guys, I'm always saying to everybody, talk to a therapist. Talk to a therapist because honestly, they are going to be so useful, especially dealing with shame, and avoidance. So let's go ahead and jump into this topic. So as I explained, shame in the past has impacted my well-being. My personal well-being has played a significant role in the choices that I have made for my life, as well as avoidance became a very big factor for me because I'm the kind of person where I have the tendency to want to avoid the pain or escape the pain. But the thing is that what I've realized over time is you are not escaping the shame or you're not escaping the avoidance. When you are feeling emotionally, I want to say in disarray, shame and avoidance may be a factor that comes into your mindset. You may feel like tension, stress, and all the rest of these things. And a lot of these, I want to say, life is hard. Um, and we are created to feel different type of feelings, and it's okay to feel those different type of feelings. However, I feel at the same time you have to have ways in order to manage those feelings, because you don't want to go through shame and avoidance or any of the other factors, if not necessarily if you don't have to, but you want to have the tools in order to deal with it. And that is what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. So specifically, I want to talk about just a story where I felt the shame and avoidance. So I specifically remember feeling shame when I moved out of my partner's home. So last week I talked about that I had was living with a man who was narcissistic, and that relationship wasn't going anywhere. um, and pretty much I had to restart all over again. At that time, I was 22 years old, 22, 23 years old. I had to move back in with my mother. At that time, she was living with her boyfriend as well too. She kind of knew what was going on in that relationship, but to be honest, she didn't know all the ins and outs. You know how we are at that age. We don't tell our parents everything, that is going on, but she was not the type of person who made me feel guilty, but because how I was raised, I already felt that guilt because, one of the things my mom had said to me is make sure that you are financially secure. Make sure that you're saving your money. Make sure that are protecting. I don't want to say protecting yourself, because in a relationship, yes, you are protecting yourself, but you are, supposed to be protecting your partner as well too. But God forbid if anything does happen, just make sure that you are putting away for a rainy day. And this is not something that I did. I didn't do that. I did not save. I very much relied on my partner at that time to take care of me. And I want to say that was kind of one of the telltale signs of avoidance, of like, I don't want to talk about it with anybody, that this person was taking care of me and I didn't have anybody else to, or at least what I thought, anybody else to rely on. And I'm an adult, so I should just be doing these adult things. And I just want to say with that, it's like this adulting thing, even at 22, 21, what, your early 20s, it's like you are still learning how to be an adult. You don't have those life experiences, at that age. And I want to say to those people who may be older and thinking about the choices that they've made at that age, just understand that I don't want to say, like, I want to say it's okay. It's okay that you messed up at that age, because we are not walking into that period of our time, as I mentioned before, knowing everything. We are learning very much about ourselves. If we're with a partner, we're very much learning about the partner. We're learning about the experiences that we are in at that time. It's not until you're really older and again, you've lived, that you honestly understand what you need to be doing at 21, 22, 19, and, those younger ages. And that's, also a factor of the reason why I always say parents or parents of children should be older. That's just my personal opinion, because you can give them the tools in order to guide them through. But even so, I want to say at that age is my mom gave me the tools to guide me through, but I did not listen. Because you may come into a situation like me, um, that your child thinks that they know it all. And that's another factor as well too, is I felt like I knew it all and nobody could tell me anything. And this is the choice that I made with my life, so suck it up and it's going to be what it be. But then turn around having that basically, I don't want to say thrown back in my face, but thrown back in my face of realizing that, girl, you don't know anything because now look at the situation that you are in. So again, coming back home to live with my mother at 22, I was embarrassed. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame for what she told me that was going to happen actually happened. And then really just honestly dealing with those emotions. But as I said, it was never a situation where she expressed to me, well, you should have done X, Y, and Z. Honestly, this is not something that we've sat down and we've talked about. We've talked about it into some context of me knowing that I was wrong. But I don't recall us actually sitting down and really get into the details about that time. And we may never sit down and have that conversation, or we may, but we'll cross that bridge when that time comes. So, I remember during that time, just the shame and avoidance. I physically just felt so stressed out. I felt so stressed out because of the choices that I made. I felt so stressed out because I was thinking at that time, should I go back to this person who, again, wasn't treating me the way that I needed to be treated? But again, these are the blinders that at 22 you have because you don't really know that it's a problem, and you just want to do what you want to do. I also recall just having a lot of headaches at that time as well too. I never really expressed it much to my mom because during, like I said, during this time I was living with my mom. But I never really expressed this to my mom. But I was stressed. I had, the weight of the world on me. I remember I wasn't really sleeping at that time. And if you know anything about me, sleep is the telltale sign that your girl is stressed. Like this past 2 years when I was going through just anxiety and depression, one of the, I want to say, attributes or side effects, that's what you call it, symptoms. I guess I'll say that was that I could not sleep. Sleep is one of the I want to say most important elements that you're going to need in your life in order just to manage your stress and deal and all those things. And that's not something that I was really getting, because I was just so dealing with my choices, and dealing with the shame and dealing with just trying to think that I'm really avoiding the situation, but in theory I'm not really avoiding the situation because we are dealing with these emotions. But not really understanding avoidance at that time. Honestly, I didn't really, like, I didn't know that's what I was going through. But also, in addition to that, just the emotional factors became a big part of it as well too. I want to say during that period of time, and it lasted for many years. It wasn't like, okay, it was a couple of months and it was over and I worked on myself and now all these things are gone. The emotional part of it, the physical part of it, was gone. These are something that has been a part of me for a very long time, where I could say now that I'm 40. Well, I want to say I started dealing with it in my 30s, but in my 40s, this is where I'm truly dealing with those feelings, the physical and the emotional side of just the shame and the avoidance factor. But getting into the emotional state of where I was, or just where I've been in the past couple of years, I'm gonna be honest with you, and working on myself, is just the fear of vulnerability, fear of opening up and expressing my feelings about things that have taken place, my failures, relationships, how I grew up, all that. It's just like all that is just fear of vulnerability. I could say for the top part of it, of people would say, "Oh, dang, you dealt with those problems. That's not something that I can understand or help you with," and just being vulnerable and not getting what I need to get out of being vulnerable. So therefore, I just might as well keep it to myself because now I have to make that person feel comfortable with the things that I've gone through. And one of the things I've realized is that it's not my place to make you or anyone feel comfortable for the things that I, discuss. If you choose to be in a relationship with me, and I'm not talking about, you know, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything like that, even friendship. If you choose to have a relationship with me, then, understand that these are going to be the factors that is going to come into play and they're going to be what it be. But me also understanding that for that person as well, too. But also some of the other emotional factors that I felt at that time and even up until a couple of years ago is anger. I felt angry for what happened, how what I put myself through, how others treated me, anger for where I thought I should be, but I'm not. So wondering how do I get there, and that that state of where I was just it took a toll. It honestly took a toll on me because what I started to realize is that it was blocking my blessings. The anger was blocking my blessings. Um, it's just I got for me I just in the past couple of years it's like I got tired of being angry. Like things happen. Life sucks sometimes and shit happens and you just have to I want to say deal with it. But you just have to learn, okay, how am I going to maneuver through this to get where I want to get to? You know what I mean? And not allow anger to stir you or steer you in the place that you want to be because anger is just not going to it's not going to work. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not going to work for where you're trying to get to. So, guilt. Let's talk about the guilt. The guilt side of it was just feeling so embarrassed. I'm gonna be honest with you, just feeling so embarrassed with my life, the people that I've allowed in my life. And I want to say this shame and avoidance, this is not something where this is my internal feelings. All these feelings are my internal feelings. I'm not saying that anybody did this to me. Some factors, yes, some people did do to me, but this is just my mindset. What's been, playing in my brain, and not necessarily what somebody did to me. So let's get back into the guilt. And I want to tag this one into the cycle of thoughts that was also a factor as well, along with the guilt. It's like these two worked hand in hand. I felt guilt for all the things that I put myself through in thinking about all the possibilities, and what could I have done differently? And realizing that, be honest with you, I could have not done anything differently. It would have been me making it a completely different choice, but where I was at that time, I didn't even have the capability or the thought pattern to even make another choice because again, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And that's just affected different parts of my life. It just wasn't only in relationships, it was, schooling, it was just choices that I made for myself, and the guilt side of, oh dang, I should have made this decision but you didn't, and why did you not think about this, or why did you not do this instead? So now the cycle of thoughts is going over and over in my head. Well, maybe if you did this would have been an outcome, or maybe if you did that would have been the outcome. And it was just like one of the things I mentioned on this podcast is being a hamster on the wheel, and that is what it was like. Was just constantly obsessing over the choices that I made and feeling guilty for the choices that I made. And honestly, guilt is something that will go away in time. You're all, depending on the outcome, you're always going to feel. guilty for the choices that you've made. And again, this is just a situation which, or a circumstance of which you're just gonna have to deal with. You're just gonna have to overcome it in whatever way that works best for you. I'm going to, in this episode, give you some tools in which I use to overcome just these emotional feelings that I was feeling at that time. And like I said, what I felt in the past couple of years that I've been working on. But let's bring the next bullet point, hopelessness. Hopelessness, guys. When you have hopelessness and you think that nothing is ever going to change and your life is going to be like this forever, this plays on your mental. This honestly plays on your mental because I feel like it stops you from wanting to push forward. It stops you from seeing that there's a possibility for things to change. It just puts you in a state of uncertainty. And hopelessness is something that I never really wish upon anybody because I want to see everybody thrive. I want to see everybody make it. And when you don't feel like anything is going to work positively, and or if you make this decision, well, it's not going to work out. You have no faith that it is going to work out. That is a major problem. That is a major, major, major problem. And that is something that I had to work on for myself, is understanding that I need to continue to push forward, or I need to push forward. Not even continue, because at that point I was at a standstill, but I need to push forward. If I want to see the success of whatever I'm in doing at that time, it first starts with you feeling like you can do X, Y, and Z. When you work on yourself, honestly, all the outside noise and whatever other people tell you or whatever situations that may impact you is not even going to have a factor, because you know in your head this is going to work out. So, like I said, hopelessness is not something that I really, I hate it. I hate it. I hate when I hear other people talk about how hopeless they feel. It's like, dang, what can we do to help? It's part of me wants to say, like, what can I do to help? But at the end of the day, I know that that person can only help themselves. Like, I can be a voice of reason. I can say X, Y, and Z, but it's really up to that person to do, move and put forth the action and everything. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Reflection by Abijah. Feel free to check out the podcast Facebook and Instagram page. The links will be available in the show notes. Let's get back to the podcast. So let's go ahead and talk about avoidance. And like I said, your girl, I raise my hand to this. Avoidance is something that has played a role for a very, 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 when I say very, very long time. Avoidance. And for me, these are what I'm going to discuss is the top reasons of avoidance for me. Some of them play into who I am now. Some of them play into my past as well too. But the first one I want to talk about is avoidance of the uncertainty. So, feelings of I won't be able to handle the outcome, therefore, why deal with the situation? Fear of what the result is going to be. And this is something that has played a very big factor. I remember having a conversation with my mom, and as I told you guys before, I've been dealing with, even to this day, I still deal with the aftermath of signing paperwork for signing paperwork for a home that I did not know I was signing paperwork for. And although I have filed bankruptcy, although I've done my part, now the home, even to, I don't even know where it's at this point, because I don't really deep dive or anything like that. Like, I try to not, like, I should know what is going on, but, and I guess that's the avoidance part of it, but I'll deal with it when the time comes that I need to deal with it. But the home has been in a state of foreclosure, I want to say, for years. I don't even know where where it's at right now. I'm gonna be honest with you. And when I say foreclosure, I mean foreclosure of a home. If you did not listen to last week's episode, so a lot of banks and companies have been calling, and it's been a long time. It's been a while since they've been calling, but reaching out to me, telling me, oh, me giving them my story, what I say is my sob story, but is my story, and them not really giving a freak. I was going to say the other word, but not them not caring and them wanting their money or them wanting whatever that they want. And because now I've put my signature on these documents and all the rest of this stuff, my ex at this point obviously has not been paying for the mortgage. I am not paying for anything because again, this is not, even though yes, I signed this paperwork, this is not my property because I'm done. You understand what I'm saying? This situation was not supposed to happen. I was not supposed to be here. But what I was doing is I was avoiding the phone calls. And I remember I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, girl, just deal with it. Whatever it is, just deal with it. It can't get any worse than what it is right now. Wherever it may be, it can't get any worse. So like I said, just fear of the outcome of me putting myself back into the situation and dealing with this person that I don't want to deal with, where my life is at this point. I'm married. I am happy. I am with somebody who gives me what I need. And do I want to put myself back into the situation and dealing with this man who hurt me? Yeah, see what I'm saying? Like this is the thing. I mentioned last week is that hurt, pain, how someone treated you, yes, you forgive, but you never forget. You forgive, but you never forget. So that pain is still there. How he treated me, it's still there. It's something that I would never forget. So to put myself back in the same situation to deal with him, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to be bothered with you. So that it's that fear of having to deal with somebody or deal with somebody that you don't want to deal with. It'd be as clear as day. So, one of the other bullet points that I wanted to talk about is avoidance for safety and limitation. Detaching my feelings from the pain and acting like it is no longer there. And I want to say to this is not, doesn't work. I mean, honest with you, this does not work. Trying to detach your feelings from the stress or limit interaction or whatever the case may be, like you can limit interaction to protect yourself. I'm not saying that, but there comes a point in which you have to be vulnerable. um and I'm thinking about this and how I really want to say this. And vulnerable for me, this has become a factor into my next relationship with my, well, not, well, at that point, next relationship where I was at 22, 23, and 30s and so forth. But my relationship with my husband, and I came into this relationship very much protecting myself, very much limiting my feelings and playing the safety game and not wanting to be vulnerable and not wanting to put my reassurance, or I want to say, I'm gonna be honest with you, like get behind my husband because of how I was treated in my past. And I avoided just that feeling because I was protecting myself, but then realizing that when I was doing that, I was hurting him. It's nothing like when you're trying to protect yourself, but you realize you're hurting somebody else. Guys, I'm telling you, it's the worst. It's one of the feelings that you don't want to feel. It's one of the feelings that you don't want to feel is when you hurt your partner due to your safety measures. I'm gonna be it's I'm thinking about it and I'm just thinking about like that was a major issue. That was a major issue. So that is something that I had to work on. But one of the other bullet points I wanted to talk about was stunted emotional growth. And this was a factor in my relationships or relationship and relationships. Because my feelings were in disarray and I didn't know how to deal with it, I was coping with the stress. I was coping with the stress, or what I thought was coping with the stress, but it showing up in other places, and how I interacted with people and realizing that I was letting loose on these people. And or when I speak about my job, where I had left my job after like 9 years, coping with the stress of just dealing with how things were, how I was feeling at that particular time, um, and emotionally just not. It was time for me to go. And then when I say emotional growth, it's this is the thing. It affected me at 22, but it also affected me later down the road as well too. Emotional growth is not something that you only do at one period of your life. You do this throughout your life, because you're constantly changing, right? You're constantly growing as an individual. So, how you may have done something in your teens or your 20s or your 30s may not be how you do something in your 40s. Why? Because you grow, right? Emotional growth. So, where I was is that in my 20s and 30s, let's talk about the job, that I was used to working hard, trying to be a perfectionist, putting the weight of the world on me, and then dealing with the stress and the anxiety and how I felt about, circumstances that I was dealing with. And then I got to a point that it was just too much for me to bear. Now I am 41. This was a couple of years ago. And I am no longer feel that stress. Why do I no longer feel that stress? Because I chose to eliminate that situation, because emotionally I know that it was too much of it affected me too much. It hurt me. I want to be honest with you. It hurt me too much to deal with what I was dealing with. You understand what I'm saying? So emotionally, I am not in the same place as I was in my 30s when I first started this job, right? So in relationships, it plays the same factor as well too. The decisions and how you felt in your 20s and 30s, like if you see something, you deal with the stress of that relationship in your 20s or whatever age you may be. You deal with that stress. But later on, as the years go on, you're like, no, I'm not going to put myself into this situation of dealing with a person who is not giving me what I want. You know what I'm saying? Or me accepting whatever they have to offer. This is what I want and this is what I expect. And if they can't bring me what I expect, then it's just not going to work out. And there's not going to be any stress about that. There's not going to be any coping with that or anything, because before, later or early in your years, you may have just been coping with whatever you were getting. Yes, and I'm saying, and be stressed out with whatever you were getting back then. But now you're like, nah, I'm not dealing with that. So that's the reason why I say stunting emotional growth again. This is something that you're going to go through this. I'm gonna be honest with you. For me, I can't say you. Let me correct myself. For me, this is something that I have gone through different stages in my life. I want to say. I want to get into how did I recognize that this was a problem, and I want to go back into the feelings of the shame and avoidance, and how I felt like this was a problem and something that I needed to work on, but did not really. I want to say at this point, uh I mean, I started working on this probably my late 20s when I went back to school and I was working on my degree. I knew that I wanted to I knew I wanted to have a decent job. I wanted to be able to provide for myself. I didn't work really hard when I had went to school initially, because my life was just very unhappy at that point. This is when I was with my ex, and my grades were in the dumpster dive. So I went back to school. So I want to say, I think I went back to school in my late 20s, but I've been working on these, like I said, I've been working on these tools and learning more about myself in the past. What, 15 years, 10 to 15 years? I'm gonna be honest with you. But like I said, let's talk about recognizing that there was a problem. Okay, so physically and emotionally exhausted. The weight of the shame and avoidance created intense stress for me. Okay, physically, I felt like I was just drained and I just couldn't deal. I also talk about, I mentioned before, bottling up my feelings and feeling that if I bottled everything up, I was attempting to avoid the feelings, but realizing that I'm not necessarily avoiding the feelings. And I was trying to, how can I say? I was trying to do things in silence. And I realized that, one, now when I think about it, this was by choice, but realizing that silence, it's not, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And this is like one of the top, you know, I want to say, factors that I've recognized that there is a problem and I honestly need to work on myself. So also in addition to that, it impacted my growth. As I mentioned earlier before, I had lack of drive. I had lack of drive just because where I was at my life, I felt like my life wasn't going anywhere. I felt like, well, you know what? It is what it is. And I believed that nothing would change. And I figured, you know what, girl, just accept where you are. And again, this is another factor where I says, like, never accept where you are in life. Like, you could always have better, but better only happens by your choosing. If you choose to deal with the drama and the stress, that's what's going to be. Now, if you choose to deal with happiness and joy and positive relationships, then that is what it's going to be, because you know that you don't want to feel the weight of whatever the negative situation, whatever could be going on. You don't want to feel the weight of that. And it's by choice. It's by choice that you choose to set yourself up for success. I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're gonna set yourself up to deal with the bull crap, then that is what it's gonna be. So let's go ahead and get into the next bullet point. I know that last one was a pretty long one. So I wanted to talk about repeated behavior, but specifically, I wanted to talk about it in regards into ties into a relationship. So one of the things I speak often about, if you've been listening to this podcast, is about relationships. And I've always felt like I needed to save my partner and believing that I couldn't manage or they couldn't manage without me. But then I realized that it was not my responsibility to save them, that pretty much they're an adult and it's their prerogative for them to save themselves. And in some situations I recognized that they were also just using me at the same time, as I mentioned about the narcissistic relationship that I was in and all the rest of that stuff that happened in that relationship. And there's more that happened in that relationship that I haven't gotten into, but we'll get into that later down the road. But recognizing that, sometimes people are just going to want to use you, and I was tired of being used. So I recognized that this was a problem. This is something that I needed to fix, or learn more about so that I can fix the situation. So, how did I overcome the shame? How did I overcome the avoidance? Um, I started to talk about what happened to me and opening up about situations that I've been through and no longer bottling my feelings. And what I started to realize, especially with this podcast and being able to have these conversations with you guys, is that it offers clarity. Like, in the process of me having these conversations with you, there are times in which I take a moment and I just think about what I said. And it's like a aha moment. Like, okay, yes, that is your problem. Like, for instance, I'm going to talk about something I learned just this episode. I was jotting down some notes and I was like, okay, why are you doing that? And I sat back and I thought about it. I said, you're doing, this is the result, or this is the reason why you are making decisions because of this. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But also talking about what happened is that I no longer felt burning anymore. Instead, I felt like, or I feel like I am creating some healing place, like some healing within myself, like, and healing takes time. I'm gonna be honest with you, it doesn't work overnight, like everything else doesn't work overnight. Healing takes time, but being able to express how I feel and talk about things that has happened to me, it gives me a purpose. It gives me just a drive to want to improve on who I am, and not even necessarily for anybody else, just for me. Like, that should be priority. You don't never want to improve yourself for somebody else. No, you want to do it for yourself because you want to see yourself in a better place. So, one of the other bullet points I wanted to talk about is redefining, or one of the other factors I wanted to talk about in overcoming shame and avoidance is redefining failure. Recognizing that mistakes happen, and there's a process. Understanding that there's a process, and I have to think about what can I learn from the failure. And understand the failure doesn't. It's not who I am. It's not going to. It's a learning process. It's I'm not going to embody the failure. Yeah, I'm going to learn from it, but I'm not going to allow it to totally encompass who I am as a human being, or who I am as a Bia. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that is what I was doing before. I was allowing for the failures to keep me stagnant and not allow for me to set purpose for my life. You understand what I'm saying? And dealing with, things that I had dealt with in my past. It's like, okay, what's the point? This is what your life is going to be, as I had mentioned before. So what's the point of even working to get to do any better? But I had to take myself out of that, and just redefining failure as, you know what, girl, you messed up. What did you learn from it? Don't do it again. And it is what it is. See, instead of saying, like, you can't change the failure. The failure is what it is. You just have to learn from it and move on to the next step, and not internalize it so much. So one of the other factors I wanted to talk about is inner child work. And I wanted to talk about being compassionate to my younger self. And I think I did an episode about this before, being compassionate to my younger self and reflecting on my past experiences, and focusing on the root cause. So now this is the part where it was an aha moment for me, where I was just sitting down a little bit early and taking notes for this episode. And I wanted to give an example of the impact of just inner child work, and one of the things I just learned about myself today. Okay, so why do I want to save men? Why do I want to save men? Um, and I sat down today and I was like, okay, that's a question. What's the answer? And I started to go back in my life and think about, the experiences and things that I saw, and just my feelings, behind it. And what the thing is that I observe, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I said, I'm always honest with this episode, and this is not to hurt anybody. It just is what it is. Um, I observe in my childhood, a lot of I served in my childhood relationships, where the woman was there for the man, picking up their pieces and helping them put the pieces back together. And because I observe that place, or that situation, this is a tendency that I learned to, or this is something that I did with my relationships, is I picked broken men because I wanted to fix them. And um that's a problem because you can't fix anybody. They had to fix themselves. I These men had lack in strength. They were just, I'm gonna be honest, weak men due to their experiences and not working on themselves, or wanting to improve themselves, or not seeing anything wrong and me seeing something wrong and me wanting to fix them. But then I realized that, or I've now realized that it's not my position to fix anybody. The relationship should be a mutual relationship where the man is there for the woman and the woman is there for the man. And it's not, it's not, relationship is, let me take a step back. The relationship purpose is not to fix your partner. And when you're getting into a relationship, or you're in a relationship where you're trying to fix your partner for whatever reason, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a major issue. And also, it's just, I don't know. I just really learned that about myself today. Because I was like, why do you keep doing that? Or why did you do that in your past? Because, like I said, I've been in relationships, and a lot of the choices of men that I decided to be with were men who just who just were not doing anything for themselves, who did not see any purpose in life. Working on my inner child and understanding that the things that I saw was not right, and I shouldn't be picking men who are broken, I guess you can say. So I want to get into our last bullet point, and that is radical acceptance. Fully accepting my emotions, how I feel, whether it's uncomfortable or not. Feeling shame for whatever choice I made by saying, well, you made that choice. So what are you going to do to now change for the next situation? Because you may not be able to change that whatever happened already, but you can possibly change the next situation for the better. So radical acceptance has been top of my list lately, is saying, you know what, Bia, you're gonna feel how you feel. Okay. This is gonna be the outcome from whatever. Deal with it and move on. And also the another one that I want to tag into this is the perfectionism part. And that I know a lot of people, I hear all the time about perfectionism and thinking that, for me personally, me thinking that everything has to fit so perfectly into a box and nothing can be exposed. And what I realize is that, girl, in reality, life is not perfect. There is going to be situations, there's going to be things that's not going to fit into a box, and it's okay that it doesn't fit into a box. And it doesn't mean that you need to create a new box to fit the stuff that's outside the box in that box. No, just accept the fact that it's going to be out the box and just work with it. Um, and I think that when we start to stop perfectionism and just live, I don't want to say live authentically. I mean, that's a part of it as well too, but just understand that shit is going to be in disarray sometimes, and it's fine that it's in disarray, or what you think is disarray, but it's going to work out. You see what I'm saying? Then it just will become so much easier. Like, I'm at a point in my life right now, I'm able to breathe. I'm able to um just be. And that has not always been the case. Um, it's times in which I have tried to work at something so much, so much, so much, so much, and it fails, 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 fails. And then I'm just like, damn, But if I maybe put it to the side and say, okay, you know what? You're going to do this later on, or whether it's a month from now, months or years. But stop trying to think that everything has to just be done just in the moment, or everything has to fit into this certain position. But yeah, guys, that is what I wanted to talk about in this week's episode. I really wanted to get into the shame and avoidance. And I want to say, like, shame, I personally feel like, depending on the situations that you're going through in your life, you may have feelings of shame, and it's okay. I hope that some of the tools that I gave you of, like, just radical acceptance and understanding that it's going to be what it be, and just dealing with the um redefining that situation, and maybe trying to maneuver it in another way, how what have you. It's possible, and you're going to find yourself as feeling less shame for you know that situation. You're going to actually see yourself as you conquered you know that situation. You became resilient towards that situation. Now, in regards into the avoidance, is understanding that avoidance, and I laugh, understanding that avoidance is not going to work. Like, you got to face it head on, and you're going to find yourself feeling so much better when you do face it. But guys, that is where I want to leave this week's podcast episode. I hope that you gained something from this episode. Also, just be sure to share this episode with other people who may need to hear this message. And maybe, hopefully, my hope is that they learn something. If you would like, I would appreciate you if you would post a comment, especially on Spotify. If you post a comment on Spotify, the comment section is open. And tell me something that you learned about this episode. You could also post a comment on YouTube, because the podcast does get uploaded to YouTube. I believe it's a day later, based on from what I've seen, but you can do that as well too. On YouTube, you could also give it a thumbs up. I've been seeing you guys listen on YouTube. I've been seeing people come on, so thank you so much for supporting me over there and everything. Oh, guys, but I did want to go ahead and let you know, because I had mentioned it in last week's episode. I had did a episode with Justin Wilson, in regards into his book Courageous Vulnerability, which basically speaks about I want to say the male side of things, of dealing with your vulnerability, dealing with trying to persevere in your life and learning things about yourself and mental health and so forth. He is actually offering a free book of Courageous Vulnerability. I will actually pick the winner of the book, so I want you guys to go ahead and listen to part number 2 of our episode. You can find it here on Spotify, as well all the other platforms, and I want you to post a comment of what you thought about the episode, or questions, or whatever you want to post, and I will be selecting a winner from that episode to get the free book of Courageous Vulnerability by Justin Wilson. So basically, go to episode, do all the things I told you to do, and you could be selected as a winner. All right, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. Finally, stay blessed out there in those streets. Make sure that you treat others kindly out there in those streets. And God willing, I will see you guys in the next podcast episode. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye. Thank you for listening to Reflection by Abijah. Let me know in the comments section what you thought about today's episode, and share the podcast with your friends and family. The link will be available in the show notes.